Hi, welcome to Talent Talk. I'm Priya, and I have a very special guest with me today. Hi, Nick. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
So I have worked with Nick in the past, and I was just really excited to talk to him because I think there are a couple of things, that I noticed when it comes to like skills and talent and just expertise when it comes to your role that you had worked in the past in security and compliance. And I wanted to have you here so that, we can showcase that talent and people can learn from it, whether it comes to someone who's from the same field or the same industry. So yeah, first of all, thank you for agreeing to do this, and hopefully we can have a really good conversation and people can learn from it.
Absolutely. Yep.
Awesome. So let's get started with a quick introduction about yourself. So can you just give a quick introduction about yourself?
Yep. So, Nick Hilderman, I have worked in cybersecurity for many years now and in IT for almost 25. Been doing this for quite some time. I've worked at all levels of companies, so multinationals, all the way down to startups and scale ups. So it's been quite the journey, jumping around a couple different companies. I don't like to do that, but unfortunately, in the tech industry, we sometimes have to roll with the punches. And yeah, that's pretty much me in a quick nutshell for my work. As far as family life, I live out in Sylvan Lake, Alberta, about an hour and a half north of Calgary. I am moved here in December. I have two kids and married, going on 16 years next year, I believe. And I hope I'm right on that, and we'll see. But yeah, things have been really good. And then most recently, I was laid off at the last company I was at, and so now I'm kind of in between roles and just kind of looking and seeing what's out there to find my next journey. And that's my story in a nutshell, right there.
Awesome, thank you. So just to get an idea on how you got started, why did you decide to go into the space of cybersecurity?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. So I worked for a retail company, almost like a Best Buy or an electronics store, for about 12 years. I hit the glass ceiling there, moved on, and I wanted to move to a corporate environment. Now, I didn't go beyond a couple months of university at Mount Royal, and it just didn't have anything that was really an affinity to me. And I was getting bored at some of the classes. I felt like I could almost teach those ones I was doing network management at the time. And I just got bored. So I started looking for corporate careers. And I went into another company, a very large one, through a contractor. And at the time, as I kind of just changed my entire role. So I just had my second child, and I decided I'm going to change my career. And of course, I half what I was making salary wise, started over basically, and worked my way back up to where I am today. From there, I worked as a help desk agent, moved into the NOC, so the Network Operations Center. And then from there, I had an individual reach out and say, we want to bring you into security. And I didn't know anything about security at the time. This was many years ago, and they said we can teach you those skills, but we want what you're bringing to the table, which is those soft skills that often others don't bring. So I took a chance, went into security, and I've stayed here ever since. And so the only reason I've made it to where I am is because of the mentors I've had. Really, I say it's on the shoulders of giants that's the reason I am where I am today, and I have the skills that I do. So that's kind of what got me there. Once I landed in security, I found it so challenging and fun, and every day was different. This is not a job for someone who wants to sit back and just look at a screen all day. I enjoy the challenges. I enjoy evangelizing. Good communication is a huge piece as well, and I just fell in love with it, and I've kind of been here since. And yeah, jumped around a couple different companies, and that's where I'm sitting today. And that's the reality of it is just learning. And so I remember the first company. I'll just tell you how the story is. The first company I went to as a security person, they tried to keep me because they were looking at outsourcing the program at the time, and they tried to keep me there. But I didn't feel I wanted to be a one trick pony company knowledge, and so I said to my manager at the time that I'm going to move on because it's not that where I'm leaving is bad. It's because I want to get more knowledge and see if is it a problem or is it this company's problem. And so
Mhm.
I've done that a few times at different companies of different sizes, and I can see the commonalities of security issues that people have across
Mhm.
all the spectrum now. And I think that's made me a better rounded individual in security, right? It gives you more depth. So that's kind of the long winded version there.
Have you just been in the tech industry, or have you had experience in any other industry when it comes to security as well?
Everything. So I worked in ag, I've worked in heavy machinery, I've worked in a scale up to startup. I've worked in even defense contracting companies as well. So a lot of very rigorous controls needed for that. So I've seen kind of the lightweight security versus the really robust programs. I've built
Mm,
some robust ones versus some lighter weight ones as well to be more agile. And like
mm,
I said, I've seen kind of A to B at this point, A to Z as well, and just it's just there's some commonalities all the time. The size of the
mm,
company doesn't diminish the challenges that they have, right?
mhm.
There are always going to be challenges, but different companies, everything's different. You couldn't write a book that says here's how to do security across the board. It would just never exist. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And obviously, with like any tech person, any person in the tech industry, pretty much, security is also something that is evolving every day, and there's always something new coming up. So there's so many security frameworks right now. I remember, a couple of years back, there were just a couple of few that you needed to know about, but there's so many of them right now. But which are you most familiar with, and how do you keep up with that?
well, it depends on the company. Every company is going to have a different framework. If you're an international market, ISO might be a good framework to run with because it's recognized in Asia Pac, Europe, everywhere else. If you're more US focused, the NIST framework, of course, is a great one to run with. If you're defense contractor, CMMC and is going to be a big one that you have to meet, which is aligned with NIST as well. So it really comes down to the business and what benefit does the framework bring you. If it's not bringing you value or bumping your maturity and just using it as a checkbox, it might not be the right approach, because if you're just getting diminishing value off of going towards a framework, you're doing it for the wrong reasons, right? And
Mhm,
so there's a ton of them. I'm aware of many.
mhm,
It's crossing into the area where privacy and security are very close as well. And
mhm,
so we kind of have to learn, when you deal with governance, you have to learn a lot of different frameworks. There
mhm,
was one that came up on my last role, which is CJIS, which I think is a justice framework. And I was not aware of that one before, but that's something that they do require in certain companies. And so always being able to pivot, but the more main core ones that you run into are always going to be your PCI, which is for cardholder, if you're a
mhm,
merchant or taking payments.
mhm,
ISO obviously is the international recognized general framework to get you there,
mhm,
27001/2. And then, of course, the NIST 800, 171 and 53 are the two big ones there. So those are
mhm,
the core that I look at. And if you're looking more on a control side, CIS framework is really good as well from a security standpoint and an IT standpoint. So uh,
okay.
there's many out there though. COBIT, you name it. Like there's a
Mhm,
ton. Unfortunately for us, there's no general framework that covers everything, so we have to be able to learn
mhm,
them very quickly and map the ones
mhm,
that we do know well to the new ones.
mhm. Okay, okay. And what's the best way to learn about them? Is there any way that you've discovered that, okay, for me, this is what works?
I love the auditor's handbooks. If I get
Okay.
a hold of the auditor's handbooks, I can tell you exactly what that they're going to measure that control against. So that's very prescriptive. A lot of
Mhm,
times I'll say, here's what you need to do. But the reality is sometimes it's not so easy. There might be controls you can't put in place to meet that, and you have to get very
mhm,
creative to meet them. As long as you have justification on why you're doing it and it is reducing risk, a lot of times
mhm,
the auditors will be okay with it, even if it's outside of how the book is scoped. If you can prove it, you're still reducing risk, but meeting the spirit of what that control is, then you're
mhm,
okay. But those handbooks are where I rely because that's what the
mhm.
auditors are going to come at and say, prove it.
Amazing. And then when it comes to these frameworks, and obviously, as you said, it differs from one company to another, or one industry to another. And, the requirements can be different for every company. But is there any specific way that you develop and implement them, or it just depends and you customize with the company's needs, that kind of a thing?
It depends on the organization again and what leadership wants. What is the benefit of the value you're getting? So if you're opening revenue because you're going towards a framework, I mean, that's a given. You want to go that route because you're going to open those doors and generate revenue. And that's where you want to focus, because any framework that you execute on is going to require change on how the business operates. And so you want to make sure that you're not as disruptive. And that's the
Mhm,
biggest piece, right? So it comes down to scope and what's the
mhm,
reasoning behind, what's the business case behind the drive. And then, of course, you have
mhm,
to then plan and strategize that out, which is, again, generate your scope, validate what is the gap assessment, check to see where your findings might have to change, and just be very clear. But scoping is going to be huge when you do a framework adjustment, because if you come in and they say we want to cover everything, it's going to be a very lengthy journey and a very painful one. But if you can focus on the
mhm.
systems that are the most important and make that your scope, that's where you can actually generate this in a quick time frame.
All right. And then when it comes to compliance, how do you ensure that, those frameworks are being complied with?
Well, continuously, right? We're always going to be measuring. Make sure everyone you've well communicated the policy stack, that it's aligned with the frameworks that you're trying to achieve. Make sure that you have, if a violation occurs, you can call it out or trigger it or validate it. Sometimes people violate these things because they are just trying to do their jobs. It's not because they're trying to do the wrong thing. They're just trying to do their jobs, and so it becomes a communication, coaching, and really just an education piece to make sure we
Mhm,
keep going down that path. No one should get in trouble for trying to do their job, but if they know that we're going this way and here's why, that's important, because the company's going to say, a lot of times the company's going to say, well, if we're having a challenge of not being able to meet that because people need to do their jobs, that's a problem. So we have to make sure that leadership all the way down are aware that we're doing this for the right reason, and that's why we're
mhm,
doing it. That's pretty
mhm.
much how we've approached it: is communication, consistent communication, and consistent validation and education.
So when it comes to, education, as you said, are there any recommendations or best practices, that you would recommend um, for coaching or educating about security and compliance?
Well, anything security related or anything communication required, over communicate. One of my previous managers used to say, if you think you've communicated enough, do it two or three more times. And I kind of like that statement of how he rolled that off. So really, it comes down to just keep communicating, because folks are busy. They're not going to have
Mhm,
time to see every kind of communication. Don't think one email is enough. Use your
mhm,
internal systems. Use anytime someone's approaching an ask or a question, use that to help communicate. Consistency is key, and make sure that message is key as well, and that all people are making the same response. What's the worst is when you have leadership or other people saying, no, do it this way, we'll bend the rules, versus everyone else has to meet it this way. It's kind of like,
mhm.
let's get everyone on board and be clear about the message of how we're going forward.
So, when it comes to, your team and the organization, how do you prepare them for any kind of like potential security incidents?
Yeah, so if we're pivoting now to from education to preparedness, basically, most people in security have an understanding of what incident response looks like. We have, the security and IT have different incident responses. So you have cybersecurity incident response, where it's a known actual security event or incident. And then you have IT ones. So an IT one would be an example of someone pushes a patch out and it breaks connectivity. It wasn't
Mm,
malicious. There's no intent, but there is an outage. There is a break fix. A
mm,
cybersecurity incident is someone maliciously did something
mm,
that dropped, access. And then, of course,
mm,
we have to get involved and find out who did it, why, when, and really dive in. So preparedness is important, because we do a tabletop exercises are really critical. And it's not just for security. When you do a tabletop, you're actually testing your ability to be resilient. And we bring in all walks of life, because security can't do it alone. You have to have
mm,
legal at the table. You have to have marketing. You have to have a senior leader there. IT, of course, your development teams, certain managers, and you have to test this at least annually. I'd recommend
mm,
more, but again, it depends, because getting that many people in a room to do testing is not
mm,
always easy. But again,
mm,
consistency, making sure everyone's got a handbook. So most people, like in my bag, I've got a book that tells me exactly how to do what we need to do, so you're not panicking and just staying
mm,
calm. So that's the approach we've taken. And
mm,
it really just we just use the pickerel method, which is a certain life cycle of how you do incident management, and that's
mm.
that's worked out for us quite well.
Awesome. Um, and then talk to me a little bit about your management style and, how do you encourage like collaboration or innovation?
Yep. As far as that goes, I mean, it's hard to talk about your management style as yourself. I might think that I'm doing one thing, and others that I've worked with might say
Mhm,
another. You'll notice the one thing: I no one ever works for me. We work
mhm,
with each other, and that's the first thing I
mhm,
set the priority of: is that we all have skills that we need to do, and different methods of approach, and everyone's voice at the table is really critical to make a successful team. So having that open door and that psychological safety for the group will always be one of the first things I bring forward. I mean,
mhm,
people are skillful, and they're very knowledgeable, and you've got to give them that voice. And sometimes you have to
mhm,
pull that voice from them because they're scared to say it. So giving them that confidence, people first, right? Always people first for me. Everything else can come second because most folks will do the right thing, and
mhm,
and the trust is there. So I mean, that's how I approach most of the teams I've worked with,
mhm,
is just to let them know we're on the level. We are all here because we're skilled performers and we're going to be the best that we can be. And that's how I've approached it in the past.
mhm. So obviously recently we have had, quite a few incidents with, different companies when it comes to security. And the recent one was the CrowdStrike
Yep.
incident. And, obviously a lot of people after that have, there's definitely fear in, obviously individuals, and people are trying to find out, what's the best way to deal with situations like this, and they want to learn from it. So what would your what are your thoughts on it, and what would you be recommending to other people?
Well, similar to what we spoke about earlier with the tabletops, make scenarios unique. Make them unique where it's not always something on your systems that goes. Make a vendor security piece where a vendor got compromised or something occurred, much like the CrowdStrike one. And how do you react? Because then you're reacting on things that are out of your control. You then
Mhm,
have to reach out to the vendor and wait for them to
mhm.
give you information. And these are scenarios that you should be bringing up. It's not always that
Yeah.
they're going to get attacked directly to your systems. A
Mhm,
lot of times now with the cloud, everyone's using SaaS apps,
mhm,
and if that SaaS apps gets popped, you have to have a contingency where you're not in control of that data, and now you
mhm,
have to still communicate to your customers and make decisions. That's the way we've approached it in the past. Is I always like to bring in those because it's more common now.
mhm,
It's not always your tool that's getting compromised, it's someone else's that has your data. And so you
mhm,
have to be ready for that. On how do you approach that? What does your contract language look like on your legal agreements? What are the SLAs and the OLAs for getting response times? And because you still have the accountability, but they have the responsibility. And you're
mhm,
accountable to your customers to let them know what's going on because they may
mhm,
not. So testing
mhm,
it, again, is very, very important.
mhm. So when it comes to, like, as you mentioned, communication with the customer, um, how does that process work? Do you work with, different teams to, articulate and formulate, like, the communication that will be sent out to the customers, or, how does that process work?
Yeah, you want to centralize everything. You don't want everyone responding to a customer differently. So for us, it's always about security will not be the ones to send any information out. We will give it to our core, what we call the CSIRT, our cybersecurity incident response team, which will have marketing people, communications folks, and everyone a part of that. And we'll say, here's what we know. You
Mhm,
decide when to deliver and what to deliver. But we will keep feeding you information as it comes, and then they can be the ones to post out and decide. The last thing you want is a security person or someone in the company without the authority to deliver contacting or communicating to a customer, because during investigations things change very quickly, and
mhm,
you might have right now it looks like your data is compromised, but then in 3 hours later you find out, oh, it wasn't actually touched at all. So if you've already released that and said, hey, we're compromised, your data is out there, we suggest this, you've just
mhm,
disrupted the customer as well, and
mhm,
that's not okay. So it's very
mhm,
centralized, and
mhm.
everything goes through one funnel so that we have a unified voice.
Okay, great. Um, And then let's talk a little bit about, what you're looking for in your next challenge. What are your expectations when it comes to, the next role that you are going to be working? And so, yeah, talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, I love working. So I loved working in security. I still do. And really, what I'm looking for is, again, somewhere that I can make a difference. I love being able to see when I work for a company, the decisions we make are changing either the direction of the company in a positive manner, or adjusting the revenue in some form in a positive way, or changing the people and the approach and just making people better. I think that's the kind of roles that I excel at and I love the most, is watching people grow. I always tell people once in a while, I say, I don't know why I didn't end up in HR, because I seem to love growing careers and people more than I do the technology side. But they come hand in hand, because the people that I'm growing know the technology stack way better than I do. And just having that knowledge to present it forward is a huge one. So anything to do with program strategy, people management, road mapping, just maturing companies, and being high velocity. I love having small TAC teams. Any more than 5 reports, I feel, is too many, because you don't have the ability to give them what they need to be effective. So those are the kind of approaches I take. But at the end of the day, if you said, where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years? My answer is just going to be happy in the job that I'm doing. It doesn't matter what it is. Uh, I mean, if I'm working in IT still, I don't even know if that's going to be my path. If security doesn't have an entry point for me to come back in and the market's
Mhm,
saturated, I may pivot to something else, because I, I'm not a one trick pony, right? And most people aren't. Just because I have a
mhm,
skill in security doesn't mean I can't pivot to IT or the business right now. It's very
mhm,
easy to do, because I work with them every day. So
mhm,
I guess that's the answer that I give, is really, at the end of the day, it's, I just want to find a job where I can make a difference on the people, on the
mhm,
company, and be happy in my own life as well. Find that great balance. So that's
mhm,
kind of the approach I'm taking right now. I don't want to
mhm,
accept something that I leave in 6 months. I don't want
mhm,
to be in that position where something better comes along in 6 months and I leave, because nothing's worse than coming into a company, helping them grow, and then leaving halfway through. I want to meet a
mhm,
mandate. I want to be there for the long run and make it a career.
mhm, mhm,
Security folks and IT folks, we often have to jump jobs quite frequently. Not all of us
mhm.
like doing that. We don't want to be in that position, but sometimes we don't have a
Yeah.
choice. And that's the situation.
Yep, that's true. Um, so when it comes to your career goals, what would you say, like, in the next 5 years, or in the next couple of years? What are your goals when it comes to, like, your career?
I've been asked this before, and I always say the same thing. I say, my career goals are just making sure the people around me succeed. I feel
Mm-hmm.
happiest and most rewarding when I see others succeed, and the people I've mentored and helped coach and bring forward to excel even above where I am, is where I feel very, very happy. And so if I can continue doing that in 3 to 5 years, I'm happy. That's the one piece. The other side is going to be the business side. If I can watch the company that I'm part of grow and be a part of that substantial growth to really make them better, it's not just us doing something to make them better. It's making everyone better and baking
Mm-hmm.
security into the actual functions and the people that are doing the work. That's amazing. I mean, that's how we want to make it. And so that's where I want to be in 3 to 5 years. Now, the reality is that might not happen. Again, if
Mm-hmm.
the market saturates and I have to make hard decisions, I might go back to a very simple job, and
Yeah.
that's just how it is. But unfortunately, that's the reality of working in IT. Is sometimes you have to
Mhm.
pivot and make decisions that are pretty tough.
Absolutely. Um, and then what would you say if, if I asked that, how have your efforts directly contributed to, the security and, the success of, like, your past employers?
Yeah. So I've built a couple programs and helped and been a part of a couple programs. Some of them have been rewarded. So we did win an international award for one security awareness program we put together. Another company I was with previous to that won a Golden Quill Award for the awareness program we all put together. I was nominated for the ISACA Security Practitioner of the Year one year, and I've spoken at a couple different conferences as well. And so and then I think behind me there's another award for CIO award, that was with another company I was a part of. So for transforming risk culture. Um, all those accolades are great, but it's just those are kind of towards me. But it means that I've made a difference, right? That I've
Mhm,
done something to help others.
mhm,
If I look at the people I've mentored, I've had some folks that couldn't crack into security, trying so
mhm,
hard and they just couldn't do it. So I said I opened up my network for them. I said
mhm,
I built a rotation program at the company I was at previously here, where we take individuals for a quarter and give them security experience. And
mhm,
you can't get security experience out of school. It's hard because we've automated everything out. You have to have 3 to 5 years experience to come into a
mhm,
role, and no one has that. So how do we do
mhm,
that? Well, I'm going to give them a jump start. Let's build this
mhm,
program, give them hands on with the tools, let them know what a security role looks like, and then open our
mhm,
networks to them as a mentorship to get them
mhm,
roles where they need to be. we've
mhm,
we've placed a couple people now into security that came out. We had one lady from HR that came in, and she's now working in security. We had another person was kind of the network help desk, and now she's
mhm,
cracked into security. And I
mhm,
love it. I mean, I love seeing that career growth and that first chapter of their journey. That's
mhm,
that's some examples that I can share. And of course, I still have other mentors and mentees that I work with on the
yeah.
daily to keep building
Mhm.
ourselves up because security is a very good community that way.
Yeah, that's amazing because that's definitely one of the things where I've noticed that if you want to have a career transition, it's very tough to do that, and that's because a lot of companies obviously don't really have the time, or maybe they don't really want to put that effort in because they know that that person's gonna need a lot of like training and those kind of things, and a lot of times you'll hear like, oh, like, okay, you we can't do that because you don't have experience, and then you're like, how am I gonna get experience
Yeah, you
to get
can't.
into that role, because nobody is willing to give me that experience. But yeah, that's great. That's where the mentors can come in and be like, okay, we're gonna give you a chance to learn about this so that you can see if it's a good fit for you, and then you can also show that experience, and enter that field. So
Well,
yeah,
and it's a
that's
win-win. Right?
mm,
It's a win-win because when they come in, we're not only training them, but we've given them the skills to actually help us now. So they're jumping on tickets, they're doing incident response, they're able to
mm,
contribute. And so we see like I measure everything. So if it's not measured, it
mm,
doesn't matter in my opinion. You have to
mm,
measure everything to show successes, failures, and figure out what you can fix. And so we measure our ticket counts every month. And of course, when someone comes in to help us for that quarter, our counts go up because we're able to get
mm,
more done. And
mm,
it's absolutely a win-win. The team that's hosting these individuals gets the ability to grow themselves as leaders, to grow themselves as coaches, because it's not just me doing it. We let the
mm,
team, the people hands-on,
mm,
give them the tools that they need to teach these people what they have to know. And then of course you've got them, more production getting done because you have the assistants. And then that person walks away with experience from security. They know what the role looks like. And now they have three mentors basically they can come back to and say, help, I'm not sure what to do here. And we're all three of us
mm,
would be there. At my time, my team was three people. So um,
mm,
it's just a win-win across the board. So amazing
mm.
program. And even though I'm not there, I talked to my old team. They are still continuing it, thankfully, because I think that's such a benefit.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So yeah, I mean, I will end the episode here, but it was amazing talking to you. And, obviously, as I mentioned before, obviously you are a very talented individual with a lot of skills, a lot of expertise, a lot of experience. And hopefully you're gonna enter into the next desired role that you're looking for, and, accomplish better, more, and grow as an individual. But yeah, I mean, I will definitely encourage other people to definitely follow whatever best practices and recommendations that you recommended, and then just also learn from your experience as well. And I want to thank all the listeners that have listened to this episode. And yeah, hopefully take a lot of learnings from this episode. So thank you again, and all the best.
Thanks, Priya.
Thank you.